Well, we are now very honored to be joined by an incredibly special guest, Rob Dawson from ESPN. How you doing, Rob?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Doing well, doing well. Obviously, a very exciting start to a transfer window. It seems like the Sancho deal, and there's a lot of rumors about some of the other deals. But really appreciate you coming on, and can't wait to talk some of the transfers with you. So, James, why don't we just jump right into the Sancho deal?
Yeah, sounds good. It's obviously been a long season. There's been a lot going on the last few months with United and football in general after the wackiest last 12 months I think most of us have experienced in all regards. But yeah, with everything, I think what most fans are focused on at the moment, and obviously kind of what we talk about the most, is squad investment. It's something that Ollie's talked about, that the Glazers, Joel has talked about following the fan forum and all of that. So things obviously kicked off early this summer with someone who is maybe a year late or more in the discussions with Sancho. So where are things at from your perspective on that? How close are we actually?
I mean, it's difficult to say how close United are to actually signing him because you'll know, and fans will know that these kind of things are so complex, and they're never actually done until they're done and
Mm-hmm.
the player signs on the dotted line. I think what I would say is that you're right in that things have started a lot earlier, or things have progressed a lot earlier this summer than perhaps they did last summer. Um, there were sticking points last summer with in terms of wages that Sancho would have received, and particularly agents' fees. That
Mm-hmm.
things that aren't particularly glamorous when it comes to transfers. It's not like a big money bid going into a club, but they're things that need to be sorted out. And there were sticking points there that dragged this too far down the line, really, to get it over the line. The benefit that United have had this summer is that lots of the work that needed to be put in was done 12 months ago, and the demands from the player and his representatives aren't wildly different to what they were 12 months ago. So those obstacles are fairly easy to overcome. Um, the talks between United and Sancho and his agents have been smooth, apparently, which is good because they weren't all the time last summer. Um, the difficulty will be agreeing the fee with Borussia Dortmund. It's obviously the thing that made it collapse last summer, and it's really the last thing that you need to sort out. I think it's difficult with these kind of big money transfers because United want to drive the price down as much as possible. Borussia Dortmund obviously want the best deal that they can get for one of their star men. So there is a little bit of a clash there. It's about working out a compromise. Um, I actually think that in this case, United will end up paying close to what Borussia Dortmund want. It'll be about how that fee is structured, how much is up front, how much comes in instalments, bonuses, what Jadon would have to achieve to trigger those bonuses, that kind of thing. The nitty gritty of this kind of stuff that just needs ironed out. The general sense that we get from speaking to United and to speaking to people around Jadon Sancho is that there is confidence there that this will get done eventually. More confidence than there was last summer. I kind of it gives the same impression of the Harry Maguire thing a couple of years ago, something that dragged on and on. But the general sense was that eventually it would get done. I don't think there was ever
Right.
really that sense last summer with Jadon Sancho, but that is there now, which is good. It's good for United. It's good for Sancho because he clearly wants to come and play for United.
Yep.
Again, it's just one of those things. It will be done when it's done. Hopefully, for fans anyway, that this is the year and it does get done sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and that's a good point, and I had a couple questions about that because obviously, United kind of, I guess, put themselves in a little bit of a hole by talking about how they wanted to get the deal done by the Euros this time, or at least there was an intention to. At least that's what we saw from some media reports, and then of course here we are, kind of a day before the Euros started yesterday. You got news of the first kind of bids and offers and all of that going into place. Um, so it seems like maybe there's an intention from their side to accomplish that. Whether now it's feasible or not to keep working on those details that you've mentioned by Sunday before England play their first game or not seems rather unlikely. And of course, Sancho himself being announced doing a medical, these kind of things is also extremely unlikely before, the tournament begins. But do you think they want to have something positive sooner rather than 4 weeks from now when the Euros are actually over and fans are sitting with everything that's happened?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always United's intention to get their major deals done as early as possible. It's unfortunately it's one thing to say that and another thing to actually achieve it. I think that in United's defence, the last summer was unprecedented, I guess, in terms of what was going on, and there was no kind of plan for that. And the transfer window was so remarkably different from anything that they'd seen before that it threw everything out of kilter, and it was difficult, really difficult to get those deals done. This summer it's a little bit more straightforward, but the Euros, as you mentioned, is an added complication because obviously Jadon Sancho is with England. They kick off the tournament on Sunday. If England were to reach the final, I think it's July 11th.
Yep.
So he wouldn't be released until he wouldn't be released from England duty until after that. I think Borussia Dortmund have kind of said that they are hoping to start their pre-season camp around July 23rd. So there isn't much time between July 11th and 23rd to get those things done, although it is possible. What I would say about these deadlines and things, that last summer there was a suggestion that Borussia Dortmund had set some kind of deadline for this deal to be done. Our information from United last summer, at least, was that they were never told that there was a deadline. There was never a phone call between Borussia Dortmund and Man United where Dortmund said, you have to get this done before this date or we are not speaking to you, which is why United carried on pushing until fairly late into the transfer window.
Right.
So clearly Dortmund will want to have, if he is to leave, and we're told that they are open to him leaving because he spent 4 years in Germany. He's obviously an English boy and wants to move back to the Premier League. Dortmund will still want this deal done early as well because they need to know the squad of players that they're going to have for next season, and whether they can reinvest some of that money, whether they need to replace Sancho or whether he's going to still be with them. So it's natural from their point of view that they're going to want some kind of deadline. The issue is that transfers are never that cut and dried. It's lovely to think that you mentioned there about the start of the Euros that United can go, we want this lad in before the start of the Euros and we're going to do everything we can to achieve that. Well, sometimes it's just not possible. These things are so complicated, perhaps more complicated than even you fans even appreciate. The level of detail that goes into these things is incredible. As I say, I wouldn't if I was a United fan and the deal wasn't done before Sunday, I wouldn't be that disappointed particularly.
Right.
I wouldn't.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be thinking that it's not gonna happen because it's not done by Sunday. They are a lot further forward earlier in the summer than they were last year, and there is time to get those to get over the obstacles that still remain. There is time, whether it needs to be done after the Euros or not. I think there is still time to do it and have Jadon Sancho in the club at Old Trafford in time for whatever pre-season he can do, and then in time for the start of the season.
Right. Yeah, very good. Definitely agree with that. I got one more question about him and we'll move on. In terms of those kind of, you mentioned wages and asks similar to last year, there's been some reports at the moment of something like 17 million a year in pounds in terms of wages. Do you know if that is accurate or if there's maybe that's kind of the all-in after things like bonuses, performance-related incentives that we tend to put in many of these contracts?
No, I mean, the exact numbers don't tend to get disclosed to us. Only obviously not at this stage because obviously negotiations are still ongoing. It may be something that we learn later on when the deal's actually done. In terms of wages, it was one of the sticking points last summer. And again, Jadon Sancho is entitled. It's his big move. He's entitled to ask for what he feels he deserves. United obviously have to fit him in to their existing wage structure and how that impacts other high earners at the club. so there was a sticking point there that was eventually overcome. Agent fees is another one.
Yep.
That was quite a lot of negotiation that had to go into that, and it wasn't until sort of late September last year that those were overcome, and they could move on to actually thinking about the money it would take to get him out of Dortmund, which is one of the reasons why it didn't get done. As I say, we're told that lots of those obstacles were overcome last year, and that the negotiations with the player and his agents has been a lot smoother this time, which is helpful. What I would say with wages and things like that is that it's important for United to make sure that he fits into the structure. One of the reasons why Donny van de Beek was able to be completed so quickly last summer was that his demands, or what he was asking for, fit very much into the wage structure and fit very much into what United saw him earning. So it really wasn't that big of a conversation. It was an ask, agreed, and then they moved on to Ajax, agreed to fee, and it was done. And United will. It feels like United are a lot closer to that this summer than they were last summer. So he certainly will. If he signs, he certainly will be one of the top earners, because it's a big money. It's a big money move. He's an England international. It's someone that United have wanted for a long time. But United just have to make sure that he fits in, because you all know how dressing rooms work. You look to the guy next to you and realize what he's earning, and then you think, well, should I be earning a bit more? And then you get a raft of players going back to the board to say, well, I think I deserve a pay rise. So United have to take all these things into consideration and come up with a number that they think is right. And I think that's a lot closer this time than it ever was last summer.
Yeah, absolutely. I know Luke Shaw, Bruno Fernandes, they're going to be looking at what are they worth based on kind of deals that come in. So it makes a lot of sense. Last thing then, there's been some news on alternates like the name Kingsley Coman. Do you think there's any serious alternates being discussed at the moment, or is that more of agent and they're kind of really just focused on this right now?
I think it's a bit of both. The way that United operate in the transfer market is that they would never single out one player and think it's him or no one. The way that they've tended to do it in the past is to identify areas of the squad that they think need strengthened, have a very, very long list of players who could possibly fit that role. I think when they wanted to sign a right back, there was more than 800 that were looked at before they narrowed it down to Aaron Wan-Bissaka. So you go from 800 to probably about 30 to another list of about 3, and then negotiations with those 3 can take place simultaneously in case something happens with your top target. So there will be other names that are being considered. Kingsley Coman, you've just mentioned there, was someone that they did look at last summer. They were keen on him. They thought that he would be an alternative to Sancho. I think one of the sticking points with that was that they were only ever looking at a loan, and that wasn't acceptable.
Right.
And so it never really got off the ground. But so there's that. But there also is, you've mentioned there about agent talk, and that does exist. There's no getting away from that. That the agents are there to look after their players, and they will see that United are looking to strengthen a certain area of their squad. And if they've got a player who fits that bill, then yeah, of course that they can go and suggest to someone else that maybe their player is being looked at or monitored by United. And then once you know that player has been linked with United, it alerts other clubs to think, well, maybe we should be looking at this guy because United are looking at him, and it kind of snowballs in its own right. And that's part of an agent's job. I know that United particularly have been a little bit frustrated with that in the past. That they are linked with hundreds and hundreds of players throughout the season, so it's something that is frustrating to them. But ultimately, it's you can't get away from that. That's modern day football.
Kind of just how the game works. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, good. Well, I think Rudy's going to ask you some questions on a different topic now. I appreciate that.
I wanted to talk about a deal that maybe has a little bit more conflicting reports than the Sancho deal at this moment, and that's Trippier. So one of the interesting things that's kind of been going around the Trippier deal is we have some journalists saying that Atletico are wanting something more in the ballpark of 40 million, whereas you have English journalists and some of our sources saying that United expect it to go through for more about maybe 10 to 15 million pounds. I was wondering kind of what you've heard the deal will be expected to be done in kind of a ballpark, and if the reports of him finding housing and those details are accurate.
Yeah, I mean, right back is an interesting one because obviously United have got a first choice right back. It's different to the Sancho deal in that United have struggled to fill that right wing role for a while, and Sancho is an obvious fit. At right back, you've got Aaron Wan-Bissaka, who's played the best part of 60 odd games last season, so very much first choice, young enough to get better. United have been happy with the way he's played, happy that he's improving, and he's going to get better. I think the aim is with right back is to maybe replicate what they've done on the left. Sign Alex Telles and push Luke Shaw onto the next level. It's interesting with Kieran Trippier is that he is at a stage of his career where you wonder whether he is going to be satisfied sharing that job with another player. The other name that we've been told, dating back to last summer and January, is Max Aarons at Norwich. He's someone that United had inquired about in January. Norwich told them no because they were determined to get promoted and wanted to keep that group together. We're told that United are looking at him again this summer. That makes a little bit more sense in that he's a lot younger. Hasn't got as much experience as Kieran Trippier, and you can kind of see him agreeing to share that job with Aaron a little bit easier than maybe Kieran Trippier. That said, Kieran has obviously got links to Manchester. You can understand why he would want to move back to Manchester. Performed very well in a title-winning side in Spain last season. You've mentioned there about the fee. You're talking about the champions of Spain letting one of their key players go for not a lot of money, and Atletico don't tend to do that. Kieran Trippier is someone that United are looking at quite closely because they would be very interested if he became available. They wouldn't be paying £40 million for him, is my information. With Alex Telles, that's worked out because the fee was fair. They considered the fee to be fairly reasonable for someone who they knew wasn't going to play 60 games. They envisioned him playing half of those, and the fee that was ultimately agreed was realistic for that kind of, I don't want to say squad player, I just want more a kind of a just someone to share the job. And 40 million for someone like that on the right hand side is not workable. 10 million, 15, possibly in between 15 and 20 is a lot more realistic. And I think that if Atletico were to suggest that they would take that, then something could be achieved there. It will be down to what Atletico want. I think it's important when you talk about these transfers is that United have weathered the COVID-19 thing quite well in terms of the money that they've got available, but the transfer budget is not infinite. There are a lot of positions that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer would like to strengthen. He would like a striker, he wants a right winger, a centre-half, a central midfielder, and a right-back. But that's five positions. And to fill all those with high-quality players, you're talking about near enough a £500 million summer, which is just completely unrealistic. So what it may be is that United sign Jadon Sancho, see what kind of fee they've paid for him, and then reassess what else can be done in the transfer window. It may be that they can get a centre back and then a right back. It may be that a centre half has to wait a year and they sign a right back and no one else. It may be that they can get a central midfielder and they get Max Aarons because he's possibly a little bit cheaper than Kieran Trippier. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is going to have to prioritise. He's going to have to work out where he wants to spend the money now and where he can wait. And I think right back falls into that a little bit. That there are other options at right back. You could always bring back Diogo Dalot if you wanted to act as backup. You've got Brandon Williams there who can play at right back. So right back is one of the roles that Solskjaer would like to fill. Whether it's done this summer or next or in the future is a different matter. As I say, Solskjaer will have to prioritise where he spends his money.
Yeah, that makes sense. Have you heard anything on Bellerin as an Atletico replacement for Trippier?
No, I mean nothing that's been told. I mean, I've read the stories that he's an option for them if Kieran Trippier were to leave. No, I think it's natural that Trippier has gone to Spain and he's had he's performed well there. He's won a title winners medal, which is fantastic. But it's natural that he will want to come back to the Premier League at some stage. And very few English players are able to turn down Manchester United. So there's obviously interest there on his side. There's obviously interest there from United's side. It'll come down to what Atletico Madrid do. If they were to sign Bellerin, yeah, obviously that would facilitate Kieran Trippier moving on because he's a ready-made replacement. So I think it just depends on what Atletico want out of it, really. If ultimately he's under contract, if they want to keep him, they can keep him. If they want to price him out of a move, they can do that too. If they don't mind him leaving because they've got someone else lined up, then it's entirely believable that they may let him go.
Yeah. Mike, you want to ask about centre-backs?
So yeah, you touched upon it briefly about United's want for a centre-back. I'd probably say it's one of their second or third biggest priorities after like Sancho and whatnot. We've heard loads of different names. We've heard Rafael Varane of Real, Pau Torres of Villarreal, and Jules Koundé of Sevilla. Have you heard anything? Do you know if there's like a favoured centre-back? Because we've just heard so many names, and I don't think anyone has a concrete list for who United want, really.
Yeah, I mean, centre-back is an interesting one because ideally Ole Gunnar Solskjaer would like a left-footed centre-half to allow Harry Maguire to play on the right and bring a bit more balance to the back four. That's something that's been looked at for the best part of 18 months. Pau Torres, you've mentioned there, would fit that bill, and obviously you saw him play so well for Villarreal in that Europa League final. He's already a Spain international. United are interested in him. They also like the fact that he's got a release clause. Ed Woodward likes to deal with players who have got a release clause because there's no negotiation over the fee. It's there, it's a number, you either pay it or you don't. It's fairly easy. Sven Botman as well, left-footed, would fit that bill. Rafael Varane, you've mentioned there, is a different case because he's obviously not predominantly left-footed, but given that his situation at Real Madrid, it seems to be quite precarious in terms of his contract situation. There is an argument internally at United that when a player of that quality at that age becomes available, that you do it, or that you have to be interested because he's so good. And I think that's a category that Varane falls in. You'll all know that United have tracked him since he was in France before he went to Real Madrid. The summer that Phil Jones moved to United, so the interest is nothing new. And even as recently as 2018, when Jose Mourinho was in charge and he wanted a centre half, obviously no one came in, but the message from United was that it was because the right players weren't available. And the example they actually used at the time was that if Varane had been available for 100 million, they would tried to sign him because he's so good. I think when a player like that gets towards the end of his contract, and there is obviously some kind of disagreement between Varane and Real Madrid about whether or not to extend, United have to be interested, because he's one of the best defenders in the world, and you owe it to the club really and to Ole to be interested if that situation presents itself. Ultimately, with Varane, it will depend entirely on whether he signs a new deal at Real Madrid or not. Real Madrid are very much, and the player are very much in control of that situation. If he doesn't sign a contract and Real Madrid feel that they need to cash in now, United would be interested. If Varane wants to run down his contract and leave for free in 12 months, again, United would be interested. It will depend on, again, priorities for Solskjaer, because again, centre-back is a little bit of a different case to say Sancho on the right wing, because he has got numbers at centre-half. You've got Maguire, you've got Lindelof, you've just re-signed Eric Bailly, you've got Axel Tuanzebe, who they like a lot. There's even talk of Aaron Wan-Bissaka playing at centre-half next year. So there are an awful lot of I mean, I've not even mentioned Phil Jones. Phil Jones is still there. He's still got 2 years left on his contract. So there are a lot of numbers there. Whether you could bring in another centre-half without having to sell someone is debatable. But it's clearly an area of the squad that needs strengthened, because United last season conceded too many goals, and you need to rectify that, either on the training pitch organisationally or by signing someone else.
Yeah, so as you said that, we would probably prefer to do stuff with Pau Torres because of the release clause at Villarreal. Have you heard any figure for the release clause? We've seen so many conflicting reports over the few months that we've been linked that we honestly don't know. Do you know any from your side?
Well, I mean, the only thing I've heard about the release clause, Torres' release clause, is that it's very realistic, and that's come from Spain and not from United's end. That for a player of his age, already an international, one of the best defenders in La Liga, to be able to get a player like that for less than 100 million euros is a fantastic opportunity. And there was even a suggestion at one point a few months ago that Villarreal were so keen to bridge the gap that's been left with by COVID and the pandemic that they would accept less than the release clause. So it's one of the reasons. It's not the only reason United are interested, but it's one of the reasons United are interested. He fits the bill in terms of ability on the field, but it's also a deal that they feel, if they really wanted to, they could get done. Clearly, there would be other interest, and they would have to fend that off to sign him. But it's a realistic deal that could get done. United, as I say, United like these deals where there is a set figure that they would have to pay, and there's no negotiation or haggling. It's one of the reasons why they were so interested in Griezmann, however many summers that was, because there was a very set in stone release clause, and people at the top of the club referenced that when they were talking about whether or not to sign him, that was one of the advantages with being interested in a player like Griezmann, because they knew exactly what the fee would be. There wasn't any kind of haggling like we've seen for the last year with Jadon Sancho.
Yeah, so obviously he might be quite cheap. Would you say it's different than with Rafael Varane? Because I saw a report a few days ago saying they want 60 million euros. He's only got a year left on his deal, as we've gone through already. Do you think there's a set price already, or what are your thoughts on the price right now for Varane?
I mean, the numbers that the numbers that you're talking about have mostly come out of Spain with the journalists that are connected to Real Madrid. I mean, the number I saw was around 70 million euros, which you feel for a player of his quality at his age is realistic, I think, given that his contract situation. Because if he was under contract and United were interested in him, he was their top target, you would probably be paying double that. If you base everything on the fact that Neymar cost more than 200 million euros, that it's conceivable that Rafael Varane would command a fee that was close to 150 million pounds, let alone euros. So I think that's one of the reasons that United have become interested. I think the expectation was only a few months ago that he would sign a new contract with Real Madrid, and obviously that's not happened. And the longer that goes on, the more interested that United become, because then the ball is very much in Real Madrid's court. Can they afford to let a player of that quality go for free in 12 months? Probably not, because even these biggest clubs in Europe, there just isn't the money there. There wasn't the money there before, and the pandemic has just reinforced that. And you see the way that Barcelona, one of the biggest clubs in the world, are going about their summer business, signing free transfers, only really looking at players who are free. Just shows you the state of finances in European football. So that will be a big part of it, and the decision ultimately will be down to Real Madrid. If Varane doesn't sign a new contract, their choice is either to accept a low figure, 70 million euros or whatever it is they want, or risk losing him for free. And genuinely don't think that even Real Madrid could handle losing a player of that quality, one of their prize assets, for nothing, which obviously would play into United's hands if they were really serious about getting him.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you, speaking of the finances and what you referenced earlier, we've talked about Sancho, we've talked about a center back, we've talked about Trippier in a right back position. Those seem to be, interestingly, the ones that are mentioned the most in terms of media, in terms of reports, in terms of activity. But as you touched on earlier, and I think there's a healthy debate among United fans of whether a center back or a midfielder would be a bigger concern at the moment, and would be something that would change the team a bit more. But I guess one of the biggest problems you have in the midfield is that it seems as if I guess I would say we have a few more players there. It's even more full at the moment than our center back area. We've got questionable positions of Paul Pogba and his long-term plans. We've got Donny van de Beek, who we signed last summer and had a very minimal involvement this year relative to many of our midfielders. You still have Scott McTominay, you still have Fred, you still have Matic, and of course you have Bruno Fernandes, who's going to push to play every single possible game that there is. So I guess you have some issues there. Is that why the defensive midfielder position has not been talked about so much? Is it really relevant to outs and moving players on, or is it really also more about budget with players like Declan Rice, who are assumed to be enormously expensive to bring in?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's mainly due to budget. And I mentioned there that the positions that Solskjaer would like to strengthen, it's just not achievable in one summer. And it will be about prioritising where he sees the biggest need this season, and then move on in 12 months' time to fill the ones that he hasn't managed to sort out. You mentioned Declan Rice there, and United are very interested in Declan Rice. Solskjaer would quite like to have him in the team, but you've mentioned there about the budget, what it would take to get him out of West Ham. It would be upwards of 80 million, and then you talk about the best part of 100 million euros for Sancho, 70 million euros or whatever for Varane, 80 million pounds for Declan Rice. It just shoots up so quickly that it's not achievable. I wouldn't rule out United signing a central midfielder this summer at all. I think it's one of the areas that they would look to strengthen. It will be about priorities, about whether they feel it's achievable this summer or whether it's something that can wait. And I think it's similar to the strikers. Again, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer would love a striker. There is interest in Harry Kane. There's interest in Haaland at Dortmund. But there is a feeling at United that that's possibly one that can wait an extra year. They've signed Edinson Cavani for a year. They want to play Mason Greenwood up front as a central striker more often next season. And there is a hope that the likes of Kane and Haaland would still be on the market in 12 months' time, that no one's going to be able to pay the money to get them out of their clubs this summer. So that United would be in a better position in a year's time to kind of be at the front of the queues for those kind of players. And while that's fairly set in stone, I think, with strikers, although it's not been ruled out at all by any means, I think that will be a similar case with other positions. Right back, you mentioned centre half, central midfielder. Some of those will get done, or the hope is that some of those will get done this summer. For the ones that aren't, they'll have to wait. And I don't think there's particularly any harm in that, because the one thing that Solskjaer has said since he's come in is that while he does want to sign new players and improve the squad, he wants to make sure that he gets the right man eventually rather than the wrong man straight away. You saw that with the summer that Romelu Lukaku left. Everyone just assumed that United had to sign a striker, and they didn't. And they didn't because they had Mason Greenwood and they wanted to wait because they didn't want to make the wrong decision. And City, and obviously it's a Man United podcast, I don't want to talk about Man City too much, but they've done that.
I was going to ask you about a little bit about City too, so go for it.
they have done that particularly well. They wanted a central midfielder. They thought they were going to get Jorginho. They didn't panic, and they waited, and they ended up getting Rodri. Centre half, Vincent Kompany leaves. Everyone assumed they were going to sign a centre half. They didn't, and a year later they waited, and they got Ruben Dias, who turned out to be Player of the Year and a wonderful signing. So it shows that there is merit in that it's not the worst thing in the world to wait and to make sure you get that right man. And City have obviously done that very well, and it's something that Solskjaer will do if necessary. Obviously, we all want the best players right now, but unfortunately, it's just not possible.
Yeah. Interesting on that side of it, just to ask, have you heard any other names? Because it has been like Declan Rice has been, as opposed to some other positions, it's like Declan Rice has been the name for months now that we've heard and have been discussed mostly. And obviously he's English and all of that, so that's natural and the big prize. But a lot of other names like Ruben Neves, who may be on the move, Chouameni, a young player from France, recent talk of Harry Winks, and there's other players like Kamavinga. There's ever-present Saul rumors. Any of those that you think really have been looked at by United as potentially cheaper alternates to an 80 million pound player like Declan Rice?
Yeah, I mean, Saul at Atletico certainly has been looked at in the past. He's someone that they know very well. Again, it's never been I don't think it's ever been far enough along to actually speak to Atletico about what that would take to get him out. I mean, with Declan Rice, it seems that he is the top of their list. It may not be possible to sign him, this summer or next summer, because he is so important to West Ham that his value to West Ham is probably higher than it is to United. So you end up having a little bit of a mismatch in valuations. I mean, the other one that's been mentioned is Ben White at Brighton, and you talk about prioritising positions. Ben White can play at centre half, can play in the centre midfield as well, and has done so for England in the last week.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you have to be creative in that way to kind of cover more ground and perhaps make your money go further than perhaps it normally would. Ndidi at Leicester is someone that they like as well, but again, is his value to Leicester higher than it would be to Man United? Well, yeah, probably. And would you end up having to pay an awful lot of money to get him out of Leicester? Yes. So it will be about how United and Solskjaer prioritise. United have been very, very keen to push the message that their financial model, I know that lots of fans hate the way that United are owned, but United have been keen to press that their financial model is sustainable and has made them more durable to things like the pandemic, and they are in a position to spend money this summer. That said, they are not in a position to spend upwards of 200, 300, get to 500 million in one summer, because it's just not achievable. Unfortunately, it will be about prioritization and where that money can be spent best right now.
Yeah, makes total sense. And last thing on striker, given that you are a City reporter as well, as you discussed Harry Kane, we know that Harry Kane, Haaland, like you mentioned, putting that striker signing off a year seems to make sense. You've got Haaland on a release clause next year, which, as you mentioned, United also really like. The idea of doing that, whether they like dealing with Raiola to bring him in, is another story, given experiences so far. But the Ole and Haaland connection will not go away, so I'm sure there is a potential there. But as far as Harry Kane goes, City seem to be maybe the only realistic destination this summer if he were to leave, in terms of a club who have the money to meet Daniel Levy's demands, which are surely to be outrageously high. Maybe not unfairly so, but that is what it is. Is there a chance that City would spend that kind of money? They're not usually prone to doing these 100+ million deals, even with all their money.
No, you're right. They've spent an awful lot of money since that takeover, but in terms of the money they've spent on one player, it is relatively low compared to other Premier League sides. I think their record signing is Diaz or Rodri, who cost in the region for 60,
75,
possibly. Yeah, a bit. Yeah, I mean, it's not up towards 100 million euros. So they haven't in the past. They haven't decided to spend that much on one player. And as I said before, that they have chosen to wait to get the right man in different circumstances. I think you've hit the nail on the head there with Kane. Is that the feeling around the Premier League is that no one is going to have the money to be able to get him out of Spurs this summer. He's got 3 years left on his contract, I think. Daniel Levy would be well within his rights to demand between 150 and 200 million in transfer fee alone, and then you've got agent fees and wages on top of that. So you're talking about a deal that could total, 250, 300 million pounds in the end, which is just huge money for anyone. City are probably the only team that could that could do that this summer. And obviously there is a need there to sign a striker because of Aguero leaving. I think that the feeling around the Premier League, as I say, is that he will stay for at least one more year. He's got an awful lot of time left on his contract. There is no pressure on Tottenham to sell. And that there would be some kind of bidding war in 12 months' time, because City are interested, United are interested, Chelsea are interested, although there's a debate about whether Spurs would ever consider selling to Chelsea. Obviously, Pochettino is at PSG and will know Kane very well. So what I would say is that United have shown that they are capable of outbidding City in the recent past. They did it with Maguire. They did it with Fred. Pep Guardiola was very, very open about the fact that they were outbid for Maguire, that they wanted him, and United just put a higher offer in, and then he went to United. So I would expect, if whether it's this summer, more likely next summer, City get into a position to sign him, that United would be there or thereabouts, and ultimately it will be down to Harry Kane to decide where he goes. As I say, I would expect that to happen next summer rather than this summer, but you never know. When a big player like that comes out and says that he wants to leave, you never know.
Yeah, makes sense. And final thing on some ins here, a name that has been brought up regularly for the better part of a decade now in terms of returning to United, which is Cristiano Ronaldo. There's obviously rumors of him leaving. Now, we know that it kind of makes no sense at the moment, like we've just been talking about with the extension of Cavani, with having Mason Greenwood for the striker position. Why sign another 34, 35-year-old striker to come in, even if it is Ronaldo? And so it seems like that may be off or not something that they're looking at anymore. But was there some actual legitimacy to it this year, as we heard Ole had been kind of asking about him since last summer?
Yeah, I mean, certainly there was something in it. I think that at one point it looked likely that Juventus may not qualify for the Champions League, and at that point, Cristiano Ronaldo is at an age where he can't afford to miss out on the Champions League, and there was conversations that were had with other clubs, Man United one, but not limited to them, about would there be any market for him in the summer if Juventus missed out. Obviously, Juventus scraped in by the skin of the teeth in the end, so we'll play in the Champions League, so that kind of removes one of the reasons why Cristiano would look to leave. But still, that there is nothing concrete, at least from Cristiano's camp, that he will definitely play at Juventus next season. I think there has been a gauge of interest, I guess you'd call it. Not anything concrete, nothing firm particularly, but his representatives or intermediaries working with his representatives just to kind of find out what other clubs need, what their budget might be. Would Ronaldo fit into that if he were to leave Juventus? I don't think it's gone anything beyond that. But yeah, there was certainly something in it. And again, from United's point of view, it probably doesn't make sense financially. It probably doesn't make sense for Ronaldo to want to go back and risk his reputation that is bulletproof at United at the moment. But that said, you wonder whether he falls into the Varane category, that when a player like that, who is still performing at the top level, becomes available, you have to look at it. It may be that you look at it and go, the numbers don't work. Your wages are too high. The fee that Juventus would want is too high. No. But you have to look at it. It's the same with Messi. Last summer, the talk around Messi was that it was all City, and obviously there was something in that. But all along, United had said, well, if a player of Messi's quality is on the market, then of course you have to look at it. You would be silly not to. If United came out and said, we're not looking at Lionel Messi, fans would be disgusted because he's that good, that if a player of that quality comes on the market, you have to look at it. And does Ronaldo work realistically in terms of the numbers, his age, what he could achieve? Maybe not. You still have to look at it. If there's a chance that he may leave Juventus, you have to. Am I expecting him to sign for Man United this summer? No. But you have to look at it just because he's that good.
Yeah. That makes sense. I wanted to move on to a topic that I think has been in a lot of United fans' minds, which is a Paul Pogba contract extension. I know there had been talks, and I think there was nothing concrete in them, that there was a possibility of a Paul Pogba Ronaldo swap. Have you heard anything on that? And then I wanted to kind of, there's also been talks recently about a contract extension, that United have opened talks recently. Do you expect him to be interested in re-signing, or do you expect him probably to run down his contract and leave on a free next year, which I think has been discussed?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of a swap deal, those deals are very, very difficult to get over the line. They're very, very rare. Obviously, you look at it and you go, that makes perfect sense, but the complicated nature of them makes them very, very rare. In terms of Pogba's contract, yeah, it's an issue for United, a huge issue. He's a record signing who cost £90 million, and he's a year away from leaving for free, which would be embarrassing, frankly, given what happened with him before when he actually went to Juventus the first time. What I would say is that even when Mino Raiola was talking before Christmas about Pogba not signing a contract at Old Trafford, United never said that. United privately always they never gave up hope that he would eventually sign, and that stance is the same now as it was then. That if the opportunity presents itself, then yeah, of course they would look to extend. They think there is still a chance that he will do that. The last that we were told is that the United would look to talk to him at some stage this summer, probably not in the middle of the Euros, but at some stage this summer, just to see where he's at and to see whether it's a possibility. Because the minute that he's in the last year of his contract, it causes a huge, huge problem. And ultimately, if he sits down and says, I'm not going to sign, this summer is the last chance to get any kind of fee for him, because you won't in January, and you certainly won't when he's allowed to leave for free in 12 months. I don't think the United have spoken to him yet. I don't think that's actually happened, but it's on United's agenda to speak to him or his representatives at some stage this summer to see where he's at, because that really needs sorted. It can't be allowed to leave for free, is my personal opinion. United are a little bit more bullish about that. You know, they've been sort of relaxed about the entire situation. Me personally, I wouldn't want my star player leaving for free. Whether they could get a fee for him this summer or not is debatable. Again, I don't think there's much of a market for these top players. You know, Barcelona, Real Madrid, they haven't got any money to spend. Even PSG are signing players on free transfers. So there isn't much money about. I think United are concerned that he may be running his contract down, and that's why they need to speak to him after the Euros.
Yeah. It definitely feels like there is, like you said, there's just who's going to get him this summer. You know, who's going to pay that money? I think it's just a struggle of who could even buy him. I think another interesting topic is outs, because like you said, it's all about budget, right? And obviously a good way to bolster the budget is by selling some players. Who do you, between Martial, Dalot, Pereira, Lingard, and Chong? I know it's a lot of names throughout you, so maybe we'll just go through them one at a time. Do you know if United are willing to sell Martial this summer, or is he kind of, they're going to give him another chance, and if he can't perform this year like he did this year, then maybe they'll try and move him on next summer?
Yeah, I mean, you've mentioned some of the names there that would. I mean, the likes of Andres Pereira, Diogo Dalot have obviously been on loan. United are open to offers for them. Pereira's a little bit of a difficult situation because obviously he was at loan at Lazio when they've changed their manager, so that kind of throws it up in the air. Milan were very happy with Dalot, so they would like to keep him. It's whether a deal can be agreed because obviously he's still a very young player with time on his contract. Jesse Lingard is an awkward one because he's done so well at West Ham and he's in the final year of his contract. So United's options are sell this summer and get some kind of fee, try and extend his contract. I'm not sure that Jesse would want to do that, given that he's enjoyed playing regularly so much and he wants to play as number 10, and United have got Bruno Fernandes, who isn't going to go anywhere. He wants to play Champions League football as well, Jesse Lingard. I don't think that he'll end up at West Ham. I don't think that he's that keen on going back to West Ham permanently. And then obviously the other option is to keep him for a year and then he goes for free, like Pogba in 12 months, which would be a waste really, because given what he did at West Ham, he is now a £30 million player at least. So United can't be in a position where they're just giving up transfer money because it all helps. It all goes back into the pot to sign new players. Anthony Martial is an interesting one because Solskjaer gave him a chance at centre forward last season, and he did well. He hasn't played particularly well this season, and has obviously had quite a few injury problems. The problem with Anthony Martial is that for every poor game that you get his performance at City at the Etihad, where he was absolutely fantastic. He was the best player on the pitch by an absolute mile, and he kind of drags you back in. It's like you finally decided that he's not cut out for it, and then he performs like that, and you think, good God, this boy can be the best centre forward in the world. I think that Anthony Martial will struggle in that United have a clear plan to sign another centre forward, whether it's this summer or next summer, and then you look at where Anthony would fit in. He can play wide, which is a benefit to him, so he's quite versatile. But he's coming to the stage of his career where he really needs to do it week in, week out. I don't know this for sure. It would seem to me like he is one of the players that if a huge offer came in, United would have to consider that. Maybe not this summer, possibly next summer. My personal opinion is that he'll get another year to prove himself, and then maybe in a year's time that they would look at it and decide what was best for all parties.
Yeah, he's definitely an interesting one. I'll never forget those City games where he was just outstanding and completely took over. But like you're saying, it's just a lot of fans I think are a little worried that the consistency and maybe even the mentality of Martial just isn't where you need to be for a United player. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head there. That I think United, Solskjaer in particular, has seen the benefit of an out-and-out number 9 this season when they've had Cavani. That kind of lead the line, poacher in the box, scores all different types of goals. Those scruffy kind of put your head in where it hurts goals that Solskjaer himself scored. And Anthony Martial, with the best will in the world, is not that kind of player. He's not that style of number 9. And Solskjaer has said it himself that United have missed that. And that's why United are looking at strikers, because Cavani he can't go on forever, and he will probably leave in 12 months. I don't see that Martial is right behind him in terms of the players that Solskjaer wants to sort of come after that. He's seen the benefit of having an out-and-out number 9. Martial is simply, he's a fantastic player on his day, wonderful, one of the best finishers at Man United, but not that style of player. And I think Solskjaer really wants that kind of number 9, the Kane, Cavani, Haaland number 9 to lead the line.
Do you think there's I wanted to just one more thing on the striker. Do you think there's a possibility that United may try and use Cavani and Martial at the moment and try and do what they did with Greenwood, where I know we have a lot of talent in the striker position in our academy, from McNeil and Alanga and some of the other talent there. Do you think that maybe there's a possibility that they'll kind of use Cavani and Martial for now and try and bring in a player from the academy to take over that position and mold one of them to the exact type of striker that Ole wants?
Yeah, it's possible. I think when you've got a player like Cavani, that you need to get things out of him on the pitch, clearly, but off the pitch as well. He's got such a wealth of experience. And Ole's talked a lot about how much he's helped Mason Greenwood. And I think the idea is if Sancho arrives, I think the idea with Greenwood is to move him more centrally next season and give him more games as centre forward and see if he can do it. Because they are very, very concerned that they don't want to, whatever happens in the summer with the window and new players come in, they don't want to stifle Greenwood's development because they've got such high hopes for him. It would be remiss if you didn't use a player like Cavani to help those younger guys you've mentioned in the academy. And McNeil clearly is one of those who they've got very high hopes for. Scored a lot of academy goals last season. Joe Hugill as well, another one who scored an awful lot of goals. It's not going to be their time now, or really in the next maybe couple of years, but eventually, hopefully, that they are going to play regularly for Man United. And United have shown the benefit of promoting players from the academy, and it's something that Ole is very, very keen on. It's one of the reasons why Ole's got the job in the first place, to bring those players through the academy. And he's got a lot of credit in the bank for what he's done with Mason Greenwood, to bring him in, to blood him so early, to give him the confidence and the the opportunities to play, and you've seen how well that's worked out because not only is he one of the best young players in Europe, he finished the season as one of the most informed strikers in the Premier League, and he's not even 20 yet. He's still growing and maturing. So yeah, the hope is that there were other players to follow him, because that is the lifeblood of Man United. They will continue to push players through the academy, because that is one of the things that they are very, very proud of.
So off the United stuff, people obviously might know that you cover Man City as well, after some of the answers you've given. I just want to ask you a few questions about what they're doing this summer, because we've briefly touched on striker, but we've heard a lot about their forwards, or wingers, whatever you want to call them. So they've been linked with Grealish quite strongly. I've seen a lot of stuff with João Felix, and then there's talk of Raheem Sterling or even Bernardo Silva leaving. I saw Silva Felix swap to an extent. Like, do you know what City are doing there outside of wanting a striker? Like, is the Grealish stuff legitimate, or is he just going to be outpriced as well, really?
Yeah, no, I mean, there is definitely interest from City in Grealish. There's interest from Man United in Grealish. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is a huge, huge fan of Jack Grealish, and there were conversations that happened with his representatives in the January window before Bruno signed. And he's someone that is still on United's radar. I think it's more likely that he signs for City, because I think he fits in a little bit better there, possibly. And their interest has been quite firm. Again, you've mentioned there about the fee. The fee will be the problem, because he's on a long contract. And you go back to what I said before, that his value to Villa higher than it is to City? Well, yeah, probably. He's Villa's star man. He's their captain, local boy. They need to get top dollar for him. Whereas at City have already got a raft of amazing attacking players. Obviously, Jack would add to that, but his value to Villa is higher than it is to City. There's no getting away from that. And then you get a little bit of a clash between in the way that you negotiate the fee. So I think there's a possibility that he signs for City in the summer. I also think there's a fairly good chance that he stays at Villa, because he is very, very important. He's their star man, and they will not allow him to leave on the cheap. They would need to get a big price for him, and the talk, well, certainly last summer was about £80 million, and it's whether City want to pay that or
not. So do you think, if even that happens, or if they go for someone else like João Felix or even Leon Bailey, who they were linked with a couple of years ago, do you see any of the other wingers going? Because I feel like Mahrez is pretty set, but then it's like there was talk of Bernardo Silva wanting more time, Sterling with his contract, because he saw what De Bruyne got and he supposedly wanted to match it, if not like surpass it. So is there any talk of like Raheem Sterling leaving England, or because I assume there's no other club who could get him in England, and then obviously Bernardo Silva as well?
Yeah, I mean, there was suggestions last summer that Bernardo Silva was looking to leave. Obviously, he didn't. And again, those rumours are back. So it would be an odd one to me, because he's such a key part of what Pep Guardiola wants to do. But you can understand foreign players wanting to go and experience other leagues. Mahrez, I think, has gone on record to say that he's not leaving. He was absolutely key to what Guardiola did last season, and can't really complain about the amount of minutes he got, because he was so important to them and played so often. Sterling is a different case, because towards the end of the season, he wasn't playing. I think he was a bit frustrated with the lack of game time that he got towards the end of the last season. His contract is getting towards the stage where they would need to talk to him. I think he's got 2 years left on his deal. He's made no secret of his fondness for the likes of Real Madrid and clubs like that, and his willingness to go and experience a different league and a different club. Again, though, it goes back to money. Raheem Sterling would command a huge fee, and I'm not sure that Real Madrid have got the money to pay that this summer. I think he's made it quite well known that he wouldn't want to be used as a bit part, as a make weight in any deal for Kane to go to Tottenham. If he leaves, he would want to go as the headline transfer, I think you'd call it. So obviously that's a stumbling block as well. Personally, I can't see it this summer. I can't see him leaving. But you never know. Jack Grealish comes in, it takes another place away. The competition becomes higher. You've got Foden, who needs to play regularly. Mahrez, who was playing regularly. You've got De Bruyne to fit in. Maybe Silva doesn't leave, and you've got him to fit in. All these names can't play, and there's bound to be players who are frustrated and are looking elsewhere.
And then, last but not least, because obviously everyone knows what day it is, the start of the Euros. What are some of your picks? What are you excited to see? How do you think England are going to do? And just, your general stuff about the Euros. How do you think it's going to
go? My pick, I was asked by ESPN to do a prediction. My pick was Portugal because everyone else had picked France, and I didn't want to pick France. And also, you look at their squad, and there's such a great group of core players, all of whom have had quite successful club seasons. The quality that they've got from front to back is incredible, and obviously they've been there and done it. They've won the Nations League, they've won the Euros in the past. I think if they get out of their group, they would fancy their chances of anyone. Obviously, it's a tough group, so you have to get out of that first, and that will kind of decide how far they go. And I would just like to see a team playing expansive, attacking football win the tournament. I think in tournaments sometimes it can be quite cagey. Obviously, it's a different scenario to any kind of tournament that they'll play. It's big game after big game after big game. There's not a Premier League game against a lower ranked side on Saturday to kind of get through, and then you move on to a Champions League game. The intensity of it is phenomenal. So I would like to see a team, really attack the tournament and that team go on and win it. Just simply from a fan's point of view.
Great. Well, yeah, you've been wonderful to have as a guest here. You've given us basically better part of a full hour here, which is awesome. It's been a nice conversation, talking over everything with you, and we really appreciate that. We definitely want to thank you for joining us on this podcast episode and talking this all over with us.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Hope to have you back on soon. Thanks so much.